Natural resources are created by the Earth's processes. Some were created millions of years ago, and some are being continually created even as we speak. The natural resources living things need are everywhere in the form of renewable and non-renewable resources.
What do you mean?
Renewable natural resources are those that are being continually created and available for use again within a relatively short time. Take air, for example. No matter how much we breathe in, there is always more air.
So air is a renewable natural resource.
That's right. Renewable natural resources include air, sunlight, water, soil, animals, and plants.
Then what makes something a non-renewable natural resource?
Many natural resources are only available in limited amounts, and it could take millions of years for these resources to be renewed. Take coal, oil, and natural gas, for instance. These three resources provide a great amount of energy used by humans on the Earth, but each takes millions of years to form. This is why they're considered limited non-renewable resources.
I think I understand. A non-renewable resource can be used up.
That's right. Other non-renewable natural resources include the minerals that people mine from the ground, as well as limestone and even sand, which people use for construction and making glass. So now that you know the difference between renewable and non-renewable natural resources, let's take a closer look at some examples of both. Starting with sunlight.
Right, Captain. The sun shines down on the Earth day after day, year after year, and the sun will keep on shining far beyond the lifetimes of many generations of humans.
Exactly. The sun, Corporal, is one of the Earth's most valuable renewable resources. Sunlight provides energy for the Earth and all its living organisms. It powers photosynthesis in plants, which creates the basic food for all living things. Solar energy is a natural resource that all life on Earth depends on. The air in the Earth's atmosphere is another very important renewable natural resource for the survival of many living things. Air is a mixture of gases that remain in balance. For example, as fast as animals breathe, taking oxygen out of the air and putting carbon dioxide into it, plants are taking carbon dioxide out and putting oxygen back in.
Aha! So the air is renewable.
Yes. And clean air is important for all living things, but it's being polluted by the way people use some natural resources.
Earth without any clean air? That's a scary thought.
Don't worry. People are working to prevent such a thing from ever happening, but it helps to get a better idea of just what kinds of things create air pollution.
There are many kinds of pollutants in the air. Some are gases that you can't see, but many kinds of air pollutants are actually tiny particles that you can easily see if you get a close look at them. Some common particles of the air include dust from soil, pollen from plants, and soot from smoke. Today, we'll observe the different kinds of particles that can be found in the air that you breathe every day. You'll need 4 Petri dishes and 1 Petri dish cover, petroleum jelly, a marker, a notepad and pencil, and a good magnifying glass. First, use your marker to number the Petri dishes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, coat the bottom of Petri dish number 1 with petroleum jelly and quickly cover it with the Petri dish cover. This dish will act as your control, what you will compare to your other samples. You can set this dish aside for now. Next, coat the bottoms of dishes 2, 3, and 4 with petroleum jelly, but leave them uncovered. Place these uncovered Petri dishes in different locations, both indoors and out, where no one will disturb them. Leave these Petri dishes in their locations for 3 days. What do you think you'll see? Which dish do you think will contain the most particles, and why? After 3 days, collect all 4 of your Petri dishes. Remove the cover of dish number 1, which is your control. Since the dish was covered, you should see almost no particles of any kind in it. Next, check the other 3 dishes. Record on your notepad the number of each dish, where it was located, and how many particles you could count in it. And, if you can, record what kind of particles they might be. Since dish number 2 was placed indoors, you might expect to see particles of lint, dust, and maybe even a stray hair. In dish number 3, which was placed outdoors, you might expect to see dirt and pollen. And in dish number 4, which was placed near a school parking lot, you might expect to find dirt and soot from automobile exhaust. The fuels that autos burn are a major source of air pollution, both the kind you can see and the kind you can't.
Wow, I didn't know that the Earth's air could be full of so many pollutants.
Well, Feebles, the good news for the future is that humans are working hard to find cleaner energy sources and are passing laws aimed at the reduction of air pollution.
That is good news.
Now let's take a look at water. Nothing on Earth could live without it. Plants need it, animals need it, and people need it. It's one of the Earth's most important renewable natural resources. Water is constantly recycled in a process called the water cycle. Here's how it works. When the sun strikes water, it warms it and causes it to evaporate or turn into water vapor, which is carried off by the air. When this air cools, the water condenses into tiny droplets, forming clouds. When the clouds cool further, the condensed drops become too big and fall from the clouds as rain and snow. This is called precipitation.
So the water is recycled through evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. The water cycle.
That's right. And when water evaporates, it leaves behind anything that's in it. These strange mineral formations were left behind when a shallow lake evaporated. Remember, only pure fresh water turns into vapor.
Well, that's handy, so people don't have to worry about polluting water.
On the contrary, they do have to worry. Water on the surface of the earth and water underground will stay polluted unless cleaned up. Only the water that evaporates is cleaned.
So how does water become polluted?
Water becomes polluted from oil spills, sewage, and runoff from the land that includes all kinds of poisonous things like pesticides and some fertilizers.
That doesn't sound good. So we've got natural resources that are constantly renewed, such as air and water.
Soil can be renewed too, but it takes longer to restore. Soil can be damaged in many ways. Sometimes it's natural damage. The weather is unpredictable, and sometimes massive runoff or dry weather and high winds can wash or blow the topsoil away.
I'm sure people damage soil too.
Naturally, people continue to use careless farming techniques, such as not rotating crops. Also, tilling and plowing make it much easier for soil to be blown away by wind. On the bright side, people all over the earth are using better methods of farming, which have less impact on the soil. Increasing numbers of people around the world are rapidly destroying natural areas to create their cities and farms. This constantly shrinks the natural habitats available for wild animals and plants, which reduces those natural resources.
Plants and animals are natural resources too?
Yes. In fact, living things are very important renewable resources. As long as they have enough food, water, and air, and their other needs are met, they renew themselves through reproduction.
But how are they resources?
People use plants as resources in countless ways. People grow crops for food, they turn trees into lumber and paper, and many medicines are made from chemicals found in plants. People use animals as a food resource and to help them do work. But animals benefit people in many other ways. Bees, for instance, help pollinate food crops, while earthworms improve the quality of soil.
And people probably need to take care of these living natural resources too.
Right. And they haven't always done a good job of it. Through destruction of habitat and careless hunting, people have actually caused species of animals and plants to disappear forever. Loss of habitat is a big problem for many species on the earth. The tropical rainforests of the world are being cut down at an alarming rate. Because of this, countless animals and plants may die out. People may never even know about them.
Again, all this doesn't sound so good.
The good news is that many nations are working together to better manage Earth's living natural resources. International laws and agreements control such things as the hunting of whales, limit the destruction of habitats like rainforests, and restrict trade in endangered animals and plants. And many countries have created national parks to protect animals and plants in remaining wild habitats. Though the increasing human population and loss of wild habitat are still problems in many countries, environmental laws and national parks protect remaining wild habitats and the animals within them. When people think about natural resources, minerals often come to mind. Minerals include metals like aluminum and zinc. Iron is an especially important mineral. From iron, people make steel, which is used in countless ways. Many minerals, including iron and zinc, are essential nutrients found in plants and necessary in the diet of all animals. The supplies of many minerals are limited. If used recklessly, these supplies could run even lower. There are about 3,000 kinds of minerals, and they're formed deep inside the earth. The only way to get to many of them is through mining, but careless mining often destroys other natural resources.
Really? How does that happen?
For example, there's strip mining. Strip mining is when people extract minerals from the earth by stripping away layers of the ground. This, of course, removes the soil. Very few plants will be able to grow in such an area, even many years after the mine has ceased operation. However, environmental laws are being passed that regulate mining operations and help to reduce the impact on the environment. And some mines are being returned to a natural state. Now let's look at coal, oil, and natural gas. We call these fossil fuels because they are actually the altered remains of plants and animals that lived a very long time ago. Fossil fuels are non-renewable natural resources that take millions of years to form. Most of the energy the world uses today comes from fossil fuels. However, on the flip side, the use of fossil fuels can be very damaging to other natural resources.
Through pollution.
Right. We'll look at the three major fossil fuels we mentioned before: coal, oil, and natural gas. We'll see how they were created, how they're used, and the problems using them causes. When plant material such as mosses, ferns, and parts of trees gets buried in swamp waters under a layer of sand or clay, it decays very slowly. Eventually, what is left is mostly carbon. When millions of years pass and this carbon material ages and gets compressed, it changes into coal.
Millions of years? Coal is definitely non-renewable.
In the past, coal was widely used as a fuel to power trains, ships, and factories. However, burning coal produces a lot of smoke and soot. Oil, or petroleum, is created in pretty much the same way as coal, but the plant and animal remains that form oil are buried in shallow coastal waters instead of swamps. And natural gas is a vapor that is given off from petroleum, and it can also be burned as a fuel. Oil is used everywhere in the world today. Different forms of it run power plants, boats, airplanes, and automobiles. Oil is usually a cleaner burning fuel than coal, but people use so much of it that air pollution from burning oil is a big problem around the world. As you've learned, the creation of any fossil fuel takes far too long for it to be a renewable natural resource. In fact, people are burning fossil fuels so fast that they may soon run out.
They should really think ahead.
Well, they are, finally. Geologists are hard at work searching the world for new supplies of coal, oil, and natural gas. However, the demand for these fossil fuels increases all the time, so scientists are always looking for alternative sources of energy. That way, people won't have to rely so heavily on non-renewable natural resources for fuel.
What would those alternative sources of energy be?
Nuclear power is one. This form of energy was once thought to be an important replacement for fossil fuels and power plants. However, there were drawbacks. While nuclear energy does not produce air pollution, it does require using uranium, a radioactive element, as the basis of its power supply. Radioactive elements can produce some harmful effects, and strict precautions must be taken to contain these dangerous radioactive elements at nuclear power plants. Scientists have even learned how to use sunlight as a power source. Special power plants can generate massive amounts of electricity from gathering the sun's rays. While this is pollution-free, it's expensive to build these facilities. As we mentioned earlier, the sun is also the driving force for some other sources of energy. These include wind, waves, and moving water. Wind can be harnessed by windmills and turned into electricity. The same is also true for waves. However, moving water, used to turn turbines and dams, is one of the most widespread pollution-free sources of energy.
How about all the heat energy underground? I know the inside of the Earth is very hot. Why don't people use that energy?
They're beginning to. It's called geothermal power. This involves tapping into the heat produced by underground volcanic activity. While this form of energy is pollution-free and renewable, tapping into it can be very expensive and is only possible in certain areas. Let's take a closer look.
Electrical power is a very important resource, but it's a man-made resource, not a natural one. However, in some areas, the Earth provides easy access to the natural resource of volcanic heat, and people can turn this heat into electricity. This is Mammoth Pacific's geothermal power plant at the Casa Diablo Hot Springs near Mammoth, California. The Mammoth area is known for its volcanic activity, and the Casa Diablo Hot Springs is the perfect location to take advantage of the heat this volcanic activity provides. Here, water heated by lava deep underground reaches the surface in steaming vents and pools and bubbling mud pits. In fact, there is so much heat so close to the surface of the ground that the soil is actually hot to the touch in some areas. And here's how the power plant makes use of this heat. There are 8 wells sunk deep into the ground here. Powerful pumps bring up steamy water that is far hotter than boiling, 165 degrees Celsius or 330 degrees Fahrenheit. This super hot water travels through large insulated pipes to the plant. There, the hot water heats up a liquid that turns to vapor and expands. The vapor turns a huge turbine that powers a massive generator. The generator creates the electrical power. When the water leaves the heat exchangers, it has cooled to about 65 degrees Celsius, or about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Then it travels back through more pipes and is put back into the ground at injection wells. It's a complete cycle and a pollution-free way to obtain electrical power. Overall, the geothermal plant at Casa Diablo can generate about 30 megawatts of electrical power. This is enough to supply electricity to 40,000 people.
Imagine the Earth 1,000 years ago. There were hardly any paved roads and no railroads, airplanes, or automobiles. Cities were much smaller. Most waterways were unpolluted and the air was fresh and clean. Much of the land was carpeted with thick forests, and mineral and fossil fuel supplies were mostly untapped.
It sounds kind of peaceful.
Today, by comparison, the Earth's non-renewable natural resources are disappearing rapidly, and even its renewable natural resources are threatened by pollution. This is because the number of people in the world is rapidly growing, and their use of natural resources of all kinds is growing rapidly too.
But people are starting to think ahead.
Yes, they are. Humans have begun to recognize that they must protect their natural resources. As we've seen, new sources of fuel are being searched for, and more efficient, cleaner ways of using resources are being developed all the time. So, Feebles, how would you sum up the Earth's supplies, its natural resources now?
Well, there are the renewable natural resources such as sunlight, air, water, soil, and living things. And there are the non-renewable natural resources like minerals and fossil fuels. But basically, people need to reduce their use of both renewable and non-renewable natural resources and find ways of using them over and over again so that they don't ruin what they have left. By the way, Captain, I've been checking, and it seems all our resources on this ship are in good shape. But there is one thing we're running low on.
What's that?
Time.
It's too bad time isn't a renewable resource.